Joining us now from New York City is Betsy McCaughey, the former New York Lieutenant Governor under George Pataki and a Donald Trump supporter, and also a New York Post columnist, author of a book called Beating Obamacare. Good morning to you, Betsy McCaughey.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. How long have you known Donald Trump, and what do you see in him as someone who can lead the country?
Well, I've known him for about 20 years, since I was Lieutenant Governor of New York. But let me point out that my major reasons for supporting Donald Trump are his economic policies, because this nation is facing, in all likelihood, a serious recession in the near future. Business investment has been down steadily for 3 quarters. Business profits have been down for 5 quarters, almost 6. And the result is that growth in this country is now down to a very seriously low 1.2%. That's compared with countries like Ireland, where it's 8%. And Americans are feeling the impact of this very sluggish growth, pushing us closer and closer to a real recession. And Donald Trump has a turnaround plan, which he will be discussing at the Detroit Economics Club tomorrow, a turnaround plan that will restore job growth, business investment, which is the key to job growth, and real prosperity in this country.
What are the details? Can you give us an advance look at the plan? We'll have his speech tomorrow, by the way, at noon Eastern time here on C-SPAN. Well, what specifically are you expecting to hear from him?
Well, there are 3 key elements. The first is a substantial reduction in the business tax rate from 39% to 15%. Right now, corporations located in the United States pay the highest corporate tax rates in the world, nominally 39%. Ireland, for example, where growth is so high, their corporate tax rate is only 12.5%. So many companies are leaving this country or establishing most of their operations in other countries. So we need to lower that corporate tax rate in order to restore the attractiveness of doing business in the United States. A second feature of the Donald Trump plan is a short repatriation holiday where corporations will be able to move back to the United States some $3 trillion currently parked overseas, profits that were made in other countries and are sitting in other countries because under current law, if it's brought back to the United States, the companies are hit with such a punishingly high corporate tax rate. So this repatriation holiday would reduce that rate to roughly 10% and bring back $3 trillion that could be invested in computers, factories, trucks, everything that's needed to hire more people inside the United States. And the third aspect of the Trump economic plan that I think is so important is deregulation, repealing Obamacare and so many other regulations that are smothering businesses, big and small. Everyone listening who's ever tried to start a business in the U.S. now knows that it's virtually impossible because there are so many forms to fill out, so many regulations to comply with. It delays the process for a year or more and adds so much to the cost. And although many presidents have been culpable of adding too many regulations, President Obama has been the overall king of regulation. He's added some 600 major regulations, defined as a regulation that has an impact of $100 million or more. So the nation is literally suffocating under federal regulation, and candidate Donald Trump, let's hope future President Donald Trump, will reduce that regulation in order to make it possible for businesses to thrive again. If you're looking for job growth and opportunity for people, you have to also think about it from the employer's point of view.
Phone number is on the bottom of the screen for Betsy McCaughey, the former Lieutenant Governor of New York and supporter of Donald Trump. You can read a lot of her work now in the New York Post, where she is a columnist, and as we mentioned, she's written a book called Beating Obamacare, and what was called a sequel to that book, Beating Obamacare 2014. So, Betsy McCaughey, Washington Post has this headline.
New York Times bestseller.
There you go. Washington Post has this headline I want to get your reaction to. So Donald Trump named his economic team late last week, and the headline says his new team of billionaire advisors could threaten his populist message. What's your reaction to that headline?
I don't think that's true. This is not a nation of envy. People who aren't rich aspire in many cases to become rich through hard work, through industry, through investment. So to have on your economics team, not just academics, and he has some impressive academics like Stephen Moore, David Malpass, but also people who have done it in the real world, built big companies, that's to his credit, not to his discredit.
Before we go to phones, I want to show a short clip of President Obama at a news conference this week, asked by a reporter about Donald Trump's fitness for the presidency. We'll look at that and get your reaction.
Yes, I think the Republican nominee is unfit to serve as president. I said so last week, and he keeps on proving it. The notion that he would attack a Gold Star family that had made such extraordinary sacrifices on behalf of our country. The fact that he doesn't appear to have basic knowledge around critical issues in Europe, in the Middle East, in Asia, means that he's woefully unprepared to do this job.
Betsy McCaughey says he's woefully unprepared. What's your reaction?
Dismiss this as typical partisan blather.
Anything else you want to add?
Well, I think it's obvious that he's speaking on behalf of his favorite candidate, Hillary Clinton. It's partisan blather.
Let's get to our first call, Danny.
Let's get back to the facts.
All right, let's get back to the calls here, too. Danny, Bluefield, West Virginia, Republican line for Betsy McCaughey. Good morning, Danny.
Good morning. First of all, Ms. McCaughey is quite right about the recession that's coming. People don't have money to buy anything. They, we've got a big problem coming. And it's due to free trade. So Donald Trump is absolutely right. The question is, can he actually stop these agreements or put in tariffs or do whatever he needs to do? Because the agreements are designed to not allow changes to be made. Once they're put in, unless you have a unanimous consent from all signatories, you can't revoke them. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will have to actually look at those treaties. I don't know whether that's the case or not, but obviously the treaty power resides with the Senate, not just with the president. And it's very regrettable that under President Obama, that was usurped. President Obama should never have been able to reach an agreement with Iran, for example, without the advice and consent of the Senate. So let's hope that Donald Trump, and I believe he will, respect the United States Constitution and the allocation of powers among the branches. My field is constitutional history. I taught it for many years. I have a PhD from Columbia in constitutional history, and nothing fills me more with regret than how the Constitution has been abused and tattered under this current president.
Let's go to Richard now, Lake Placid, Florida, independent caller. Good morning, Richard.
Yes, good morning. Basically, what we have up there, yes, good morning, Ms. McCaughey. Basically, what we have up there in Washington is one party, and the Republicans and the Democrats will come together, to keep the power and the control of the people. And we saw that. We saw an example of that when Boehner and the Republicans took over the House and the Senate. They campaigned on eliminating Obamacare, which they did not do. And open borders, they were going to get control of the borders and close them down and protect the U.S. jobs to the people, which they did not do. They absolutely have done nothing everything in the Republican Party. We need an independent to get away from this total control. The people right now are being used as, I'm not going to say slaves, but close to it. We will.
Well, I'm really glad you're calling about this, Richard,
Well,
because the fact is, I believe that one of the reasons Donald Trump swept the Republican primaries, knocking down 16 professional politicians who were up on the stage with him, is that he speaks very candidly, and it was refreshing to the people, and it gave the public some hope that the nominee for president would actually listen to them and their concerns. And one of the reasons that I'm a Trump supporter is that I want to see an outsider in the White House. I was actually disappointed this week when Donald Trump bowed to party pressure and endorsed John McCain and Kelly Ayotte and some of the other Republicans in their primary contests. We need to encourage more people to challenge the go along to get along career politicians in Washington in both parties.
That being said, a lot of write-ups about it being a rough period for Donald Trump recently, the things he has said or continues to say. There's poll numbers out there. There is talk of a, quote, intervention, whatever that exactly might mean. What's your sense of the state of the Donald Trump campaign at this point?
Well, I looked at the most recent poll, which is the NBC Wall Street Journal poll, which was completed on August 3rd. So it was completed after the con dust-up, after both the conventions. And it's true that Mrs. Clinton has pulled ahead somewhat in several states and nationally. But let me point out that even that poll shows that only 22% of likely voters trust Mrs. Clinton. The poll also shows that a majority of the voters questioned believe that Donald Trump will do a better job with the economy and a better job on crime and maintaining law and order and national security within the United States.
There is a tweet here.
Those are two key issues.
Got it. There is a tweet here from Karen on the economy point. Says, Ms. McCaughey, please comment on leading economists saying that Trump's ideas would substantially increase the debt. Do you see it that way? What's your reaction to that?
No, I don't. Let me point out that the major architects of Trump's economic plan are supply-siders, 4 of whom have a substantial experience from the Reagan years. And the same warnings were issued in the Reagan years that cutting taxes would increase the debt. But the fact is, what we have learned is that when you slash corporate taxes, you increase economic activity, which is desperately needed in this country. We're languishing along at 1.2% growth, far below what it should be, far below the 4.5% growth during the Reagan recovery and the 5.4% growth during the Kennedy recovery. Both of those presidents, JFK in the Democratic Party, Ronald Reagan for the Republican Party, slashed corporate taxes and brought in tremendous extra revenue because of increased business activity. And that is exactly what will happen again.
Before we get back to calls, some have pointed out, too, that Mr. Trump's team of economists and advisors does not include any women. Your reaction there?
I thought that was really meaningless. I really don't look at people's credentials based on their genitalia or their gender. It was, to me, a very well put together team.
All right, let's go to Ron in Bradenton, Florida, Democratic line for Betsy McCaughey. Ron, thank you for waiting.
Thank you. Good morning, Betsy.
Good morning, Ron.
I have 2 points. One, you said that the tax rate is 35%, but we know that the rich people have every deduction in the world because Mr. Romney only pays an effective tax rate of 12%. That means the rich have every loophole in the world to take and bring it down, including corporate taxes that you just spoke about. So if we would just have the 15% that you talked about and eliminate every single tax loophole that we have, we'd have it even. And the other point is, Mr. Trump has not released his tax is, and we would like to see them so we know exactly what he is doing, because he outsources everything that he makes except the hats. Just the hats.
Ron, thank you for calling. Betsy McCaughey, let me
Well,
point.
hats off to you for that question. Let me address it because I think you've raised several very important issues. Let's start with what I call the tax shaming. This is a part of almost every election now, tax shaming. What it is a shaming of high-earning people who, through perfectly legal deductions like deducting property taxes, deducting depreciation allowances, etc., reduce their tax liability from the highest rate to something lower. It was really a feeding frenzy against Mitt Romney when he released his taxes. It's a major reason that Mayor Mike Bloomberg, another very successful businessman who ran for mayor 3 times in New York, did not release his taxes. He refused to release how much he paid or what his final tax rate was. He handed reporters for a few minutes a highly redacted tax form, that is, most of the numbers were crossed out, and he did it because he didn't want to be a victim of that tax shaming. To me, I have found it really absurd, the notion that successful people should pay more than the law requires them to pay, that somehow paying more than Uncle Sam tells you to pay makes you a better person. Nobody I know pays more taxes than the law requires them to pay. So if you have a grievance with the law, we should change the laws. And in fact, Donald Trump has proposed tremendously simplifying tax law for individuals so that most of us would be able to file our taxes on just a simple piece of paper, and a lot of those, quote, loopholes you referred to would be gone. So I agree with your spirit that we need a simpler, fairer tax code. I don't agree with the strategy of tax shaming people who use the law, who abide by the law, who file a perfectly legal tax return, and then are dragged across the carpet and embarrassed for paying less than somebody else thinks they ought to pay.
You can read more about that opinion in the New York Post. Here's the headline to Betsy McCaughey's piece, The Tax Shaming Trap. NewYorkPost.com is the place to read her current columns. Anthony is calling from New York City, Staten Island.
I wanted to point out one more thing before we go on.
Sure.
Although Donald Trump hasn't released his tax return, and I would advise him not to, because otherwise, if he did, the entire rest of the 96 days or so until this election would be taken up in a similar feeding frenzy with reporters picking apart every single line in his tax return, even if he's complied with every letter of the law, which I assume he has. But here's what we do know about both these major candidates, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. They have both filed financial disclosures, and I've looked at them very carefully. Mrs. Clinton's 11 pages, on which she lists her sources of income. It's all paid speaking engagements and royalties from books she's written about herself. So we can say 11 pages, Mrs. Clinton's line of work is self-promotion. She's the blabber. Then we look at Donald Trump's financial disclosure form, 104 pages, on which he lists 185 profit-making ventures, real estate, commercial buildings, residential buildings, golf courses, money-making ventures all over the world. And in addition, substantial management fees he earns managing other owners' properties because he's so good at it. So I looked at that and I thought, what should Americans pick, the blabber or the builder? And considering the very serious condition of our economy, it seems to me we are better off picking someone who knows how to run businesses, has an economic plan to restore growth in this country, rather than somebody who just talks for a living.
All right, let's get that call in from Staten Island now, a Republican named Anthony. Anthony, thank you for waiting. You're on with Betsy McCaughey.
Let me get to my points very quickly.
Sure.
One of the reasons I am supporting Donald Trump is not because he just understands the economy and the business, but because he understands the economy and the business in depth. Mr. Obama wants me to go to school. He wants me to upgrade my degree. He wants me to get certificates. And I have been in business, information technology, for over 15 years. And I have a bachelor's degree in computer science. And I live in New York City. And I cannot get a job for over a year. My last position was replaced by someone who has an entry-level position. And my company that I was working for, with headquarters in Germany, has spent a lot of time on getting in people with H-1B1 visa for the fraction of the time that they could spend on bringing somebody who has a U.S. citizenship, somebody locally. Number two, we've never been directly in war with Russia. We've been in war with Germany, we've been in war with Japan, we've been in war with Middle East, anywhere else, and the Cold War is over. If we become friends with Russia, then there's no need for NATO. NATO has never protected us. NATO has never fought terrorism. And if there is no need for NATO, then we just saved $1 billion. Now, Hillary has been running for the office for the past 30 years. She had opportunities to make the changes with reset buttons and relationships and the things she wanted to do.
Remember that.
Out.
Anthony, you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay. Anything you want to wrap up with before we move on?
Well, just the fact that, just one last point.
Yeah.
You know, when I actually applied for some jobs like Bank of America, which are local companies, or foreign companies like Credit Suisse or Deutsche Bank, you know the response I get? The response I get is the company is restructuring. So we'll get back to you at some point. And that's my...
All right, left a lot there on the table.
I want to address Anthony's call because so many people are having this experience, and it's outrageous. Let me compare what I've already said about Donald Trump's economic proposal, and this is a man who knows how to create jobs. He has the experience running companies to know what punishing corporate tax rates and suffocating regulations do to business investment. And as I mentioned before, business investment has been steadily declining in this country. If companies don't invest, if they don't buy a new truck, they can't hire a new driver. If they don't invest in new computers, they can't hire more people to work in their offices. That is why business investment is the key to economic growth and increases in productivity. So here we have Hillary Clinton's economic plan. I urge you to go up on her website and take a look at it. It is called the Fair Growth Plan. And the phrase economic growth never appears in her plan. It's all about redistributing the current level of income among other people. And secondly, she has such a list of regulations she wants to impose on the economy. New rules about who works part-time or full-time, about who can earn a bonus, gender and racial racial preferences from college on through job creation. Again and again, more and more regulations on business, even regulations on what kind of investments businesses can make. She requires that they be, quote, far-sighted, as if Uncle Sam would know that. The result is that Uncle Sam, the federal government, is going to be in every boardroom, looking over every manager's shoulder. It should send fear into the hearts of every business owner or manager. That is going to kill this economy, and Anthony has it just right.
Let's hear from Hillary Clinton this past Friday talking about economic issues.
I really believe that the core of his support, I'm not going to speak for everyone who supports him, because I think there have been some quite distressing statements coming out of his rallies and his supporters and who has aligned themselves with him. But I think the core of his support really centers on the disappointment in the economy that so many Americans feel. And what I have been saying is, you know, I want to bring this country together. I think we have three overarching goals. We need more economic opportunity, We need to protect our national security, and we have got to work toward American unity. So I have been trying to understand what it is that has driven people to support Trump. And I've met with some people. I have listened to them. And so many of them are looking for an explanation as to why they lost the job they had for 18 years when the factory closed and nobody cared about them. What they're going to do when their whole life was spent mining coal and they made $80,000 a year, now they can barely find a job making minimum wage. Why the centers of so many old industrial towns in America are hollowed out and people are turning to opiates and heroin. And the list goes on, and that's what I've heard. So I think we have to recognize that, of course, some of the appeal is xenophobic and racist and misogynistic and offensive. We have to acknowledge that. But let's not lose sight of the real pain that many Americans are feeling because the economy has left them behind.
Betsy McCaughey in New York, your reaction.
I would say that that statement by Mrs. Clinton is hypocritical, to say the least. She has warned that she is going to close down the coal mines. She has turned her backs on those who make their living in fossil fuels. She has taken a stand against fracking. I personally know how destructive this is as the former lieutenant governor of New York State. Fracking would bring so many jobs and so much prosperity to the southern tier of our own state, New York State, as it has to neighboring Pennsylvania. And so when she talks about her sympathy for the coal miners, those coal miners know that she is their #1 enemy. Donald Trump, on the other hand, and he will reiterate this in his speech at the Detroit Economics Club tomorrow, has pledged to revitalize all aspects of the energy industry in the United States, not just green energy, but fossil fuel energy as well. We can produce our own oil, our own coal, our own natural gas. We can become energy independent and at the same time put so many more people back to work. So Hillary Clinton is at the least a Johnny-come-lately and more likely a hypocrite when she pledges jobs for coal miners.
Donald Trump's speech around noontime Eastern time. We'll have it live here on C-SPAN, and we'll have it on tomorrow night in prime time. Once it happens, of course, you can watch it anytime you want at cspan.org. Next call for Betsy McCaughey, the former New York Lieutenant Governor, is Lisa, Columbia, Maryland, independent caller. Hi.
Hi, good morning, Betsy. Thank you for coming on today in defense of Donald Trump. To me, this is an election about nationalism versus globalism. And a vote for Hillary is a vote for international bankers. I don't understand why people don't get that. They're demonizing him so badly, and it's just like Hillary sold uranium to the Russians, and the media only talks about Trump asking them for her emails as if he's the traitor. Well, that's all I have to say. Also, this destruction of Europe right now by the Muslim immigration, it's coming here and people don't even see it on TV.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks.
That's right. I sympathize with your call, Lisa. I think you've raised some good points.
In getting ready for this segment, we found this headline, Betsy McCaughey, in the Hartford Courant. It says that GOP's McCaughey says this election is, quote, a war between good and evil. What were you saying here?
That was when I gave a speech in Cleveland at the GOP convention. I was actually talking about the struggle within the state of Connecticut. Connecticut is one of the most heavily taxed states in the Union. The Democratic Party has literally had a chokehold on politics in Connecticut for many, many years. They've driven out families and businesses by taxing them to death. They've driven down property values. They've destroyed economic opportunity in the state. And I was explaining to the delegates in Connecticut that with Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, this is an enormous opportunity for people in Connecticut to really rally support for economic growth, not just at the top of the ticket, but all the way down the ticket, in an effort to turn Connecticut into a red state, a Republican state. If you look at the 34 states in the United States with Republican governors, you will see that they have higher economic growth, they're more friendly to fossil fuel development, they have much lower business regulations and much bigger job opportunities, and people are voting with their feet to live in those states. Texas, Florida, other states where you can go and work and the government doesn't take away everything you have in taxes at the end of the year.
Let's go to David, King George, Virginia, Republican caller for Betsy McCaughey. Hi, David.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
Morning, David.
Good morning. I think the Republican Party need to actually take a good look at themselves in the mirror. First of all, it was us, the Republicans, who crashed the economy. It was us, the Republicans, who refused to raise the debt ceiling and caused us economic growth. It was us, the Republicans, who shut down the government. And now it's us who put up a candidate who stood on national stage and said that he's going to go out and kill women and children. Now, any true American, no matter if you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent, any true American that would have a man that has moral standards of that low represent us, it's crazy. And I encourage every Republican that's a true American that do not believe that a man could get on the stage of the most powerful military in the world saying he's going out and killing women and children. We need to think about that. You have a good morning.
Betsy McCaughey.
Well, I think he's got his facts wrong. I respect him for calling. I'm glad he's paying attention to the political process, but I don't believe that's a fair representation of the Republican Party or the current candidate.
You, of course, have a background in health policy, Betsy McCaughey. What are your thoughts What are your thoughts on the status of the health care law and what Mr. Trump has said about replacing it?
Well, Obamacare is currently collapsing. If you've seen the current headlines, it's in a death spiral. Many of the major insurers, almost all of them now, have said they're probably heading for the exits in 2017 and will no longer be offering the Obamacare plans on the exchanges around the country. And as you can see, even in the current year, the premiums are scheduled to go up as much as 20% or more in many states, including my state, or the state where I was lieutenant governor, New York State. And why is it collapsing? Well, it was a poor design, encumbered with tremendous regulations that prevented people from buying the kind of insurance they really wanted. So let me tell you what I would do, and I believe that this is consistent with Donald Trump's approach. Number one, and I'm going to reach down to get Obamacare because I brought it with me. Next time around, Congress should keep it short. We don't want another 2,572-page Obamacare-style bill that no one in Congress reads. In Washington, when they say they want comprehensive health reform or comprehensive anything, comprehensive is simply their synonym for unread. So give us a series of short bills that members of Congress will actually read before passing it. When I first saw Obamacare here, I thought of something that James Madison said in Federalist 62. He warned Congress against ever passing laws so voluminous, that was his word, so voluminous that no one will read it, or so frequently changed that a reasonable person doesn't know what the law it is. That is Obamacare to a T. So let's not make that mistake again.
We have Billy from...
And there are several other... Pardon?
Go ahead and finish up. Go ahead.
There are several other painful lessons that the American public have learned from Obamacare that must not be repeated. Number two, whatever Congress passes, Congress must live by. No special subsidies for members of Congress so that their health plan is, quote, affordable when the rest of us don't have truly affordable health plans. Number 3, no one-size-fits-all required benefit plan. The fact is, Washington doesn't know best. They don't know what kind of health insurance everybody wants. There's no reason to require the 50-year-old couple to have maternity coverage. There's no reason to require the childless family to have pediatric dental coverage. But that's what Obamacare does, and it's pushed the cost way beyond what many people can afford. Number 4, and this is really key, this is the major reason that Obamacare is collapsing. Do not require everyone to pay the same for their health plan. Right now, under Obamacare, people with serious chronic conditions, serious health problems, are charged the same as some young, healthy person who has virtually no health problems at all. Now, of course, we have to look out for the person with the serious health problems and subsidize the payment of their premium in some other way. But this current one price for everyone health insurance concept is like telling people, well, you can feed a Great Dane and a Chihuahua on the same budget. It's not possible. 5% of the people in this country with chronic serious illnesses consume 50% of the health care. Those are the people who have signed up for Obamacare, and that is the reason that the premiums are going up, up, up every year. More and more of the healthy people are dropping out when they see the cost of this insurance. So those are 4 things, and finally, there's another key here. Do not pass health reform and pay for it on the backs of seniors. Obamacare, over half the cost of Obamacare was paid for by cuts to Medicare. $716 billion in future Medicare spending canceled and moved over to pay for Obamacare. And seniors can already see the impact. Their doctors are paying less. It's harder to find a doctor willing to take you on as a new Medicare patient. Hospital payments have been slashed, and so nurses are spread thinner on the floor, making it harder for everyone who's in the hospital. You push that call button and you wait longer. Seniors are now trapped in the emergency room under something called observation care, and when they leave the emergency room, they're handed a whopping big bill because they were never officially admitted to the hospital. There are more and more reasons why seniors are seeing the impact, the very punishing, dangerous impact of Obamacare on them. We can't do that again.
Got a couple calls in before we wrap up. Billy is calling from Indianapolis, Democratic line. Thanks, Billy, for waiting. Go ahead.
Hi, I have 2 questions, 2 comments. One is that I'm from Indianapolis, and Donald Trump talked about how Carrier took his business and took it over to Mexico, but yet he didn't outsource all his jobs into other countries. And then the number 2 is that y'all want to put him in, and he don't have no political background at all, period. So what is there to do about it?
Well, let me address the second question first, because it's a really important question. You're suggesting that only someone with a lot of experience in politics should run for president. But clearly, a majority of the Republican primary voters disagree with you. We are tired of the go along to get along professional politician class. And I'll tell you one big reason. The Republicans in Washington, just like the Democrats, have ignored the urgency of revitalizing our economy. They've been in Washington now for several years watching growth get slower and slower and slower. Under the Obama administration's last 7 years, growth has been under 2%. In the 20th century, it was routinely 3.5%. We can't support our families and offer real opportunity to our children and grandchildren when growth is so low, under 2%. And yet the Congressional Budget Office is predicting that under the Obama administration's policies, it will continue to be at that anemic 2% more or less level into the indefinite future. So we need a business person in the White House who will restore economic growth and get this Congress working again on economic issues. It's the #1 issue facing this country, the need for growth.
Todd, North Carolina is our next call. It's David from Todd, North Carolina, independent caller. Hey, Todd.
Hello.
Todd, I keep getting this wrong. You're calling from a town called Todd in North Carolina, and your name is David, right?
That's correct, David.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
Hello,
Okay,
David.
Hello. Two things. C-SPAN, we need to have a lot more debates this season as we finalize this election.
You mean presidential debates?
Yes.
Okay.
More frequent. And for the caller, I was wanting to know about bailouts and Simmons how she doesn't agree with the current system. What about having to pander to third parties like insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies through patent laws and all this?
Well, I have to tell you, I'm very disappointed with the insurance industry. They definitely sold out the American public when they went along with Obamacare. And if you look carefully at what's happened, Obamacare passed a law requiring that all of us buy the insurance industry's product, right? And secondly, included in that big fat law I held up a moment ago, provisions that not only reward the insurance company by forcing us to buy their product, but actually hand them large amounts of money at the end of the year to offset any losses they incur selling those products. So I would agree with you that this particular law has been a total giveaway, a total bailout to the health insurance industry, and it should not be repeated.
Stephen is on the line from Everett, Massachusetts. Stephen, our last call on the Republican line. Hey there.
Very thankful that you took my call, and I appreciate it.
You bet.
Yes. Just a quick thing, and I was wondering if Betsy, I can't pronounce her last name. I apologize.
McCaughey.
McCaughey. I'm sorry. If you could just answer something for me, and I'd appreciate it. I'm on SSDI. Okay, I'm disabled. And the last raise I got was about maybe 4.5 years ago. Now, hold on. So what bothers me is I hear everybody wanting $15 an hour to work at McDonald's. Everybody wants a raise. Everybody wants this. Everybody wants that. And I'm a political junkie. I started watching this when H.W. Bush went into Kuwait. That's how long I've been watching news. And the last raise I got was 4 years ago, and I'm in the state of Massachusetts. I didn't even get a raise because I do get food stamps. And what happened was I got a $15 raise, and then they took $22 out of my food stamps. And then you have to understand is there's the food goes up, the rent goes up, the T wants their money. Everybody's getting money, so I didn't even get a raise. So how come Democrats or Republicans or independents or the third parties, how come no one's saying anything about people like me? And I'd appreciate it if you could explain that to me, and thank you very much for your time. And one more thing. Finally, there's a Donald Trump supporter on C-SPAN. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm sure I won't be the last Donald Trump supporter on C-SPAN. There are many Donald Trump supporters. And let me just point out that what you're experiencing, no increase in your revenue, your income, and yet you're seeing prices go up, that's what almost all working people are experiencing as well. The fact is the average worker hasn't gotten a raise since about 2000 because in real dollar terms, the economy has been so flat. And that's why, never mind the call for minimum wage hikes, most people don't earn the minimum wage, but whatever they're earning or getting revenue the way you do, they're not getting an increase. And that's why we have to jumpstart this economy. And let me just close by pointing out that Moody's Analytics has just issued a report on the two candidates' economic plan. And they warned unambiguously that Hillary Clinton's plan will not promote any increase at all in private sector business investment. That means you cannot expect any improvement in job opportunities in the private sector if there's no increase in business investment. No company can hire another driver till they buy another truck. It's the simplest example. So if you want to see an increase in economic activity in this country, real job growth, you need to support a candidate who knows how to create jobs, not the blabber, the builder.
Betsy McCaughey up in New York City, former Lieutenant Governor of New York and Trump supporter, columnist for the New York Post, author of Beating Obamacare, former senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. Thanks a lot for your time this morning. Oh, you're there currently?
I'm currently at the London Center for Policy Research.
Got it. Thank you for adding that bio point in. Appreciate it. And we have just under an hour and a half left in this Sunday edition of the Washington Journal. Let you know that coming up,